What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Finding Direction. This week on the episode, I'm sitting down with my man, Nisan Trotter. And a little bit about Nisan. He's actually the founder of TROT Fitness, which is one of the nation's top fitness boot camps. He is an author of a book called Born Gifted, and he's also a speaker who's also called by the name of the fitness preacher. All right, Nisan had a wealth of wisdom throughout this episode. We had some honestly unbelievable conversations. We talked about things such as how sometimes it might be important to detach yourself from the identity that you're currently attaching yourself to. We also talk about why the time is right now, not next week, not tomorrow, not next year, but how the time is right now. And then we also talk about how you have to start believing that you have a gift in order for that gift to appear to you. All right. We cover a lot of stuff in this episode. I know you're going to enjoy it. You're going to get an immense amount of value. If you have not yet, please make sure to leave us a review, subscribe to this episode so we can bring you content 2 times a week, every single week. And if you have a friend that you know, is trying to figure out their life, they're not quite jazzed off of the life that they're living, send them this episode. I promise you, they are going to have some massive impact from listening to this short but impactful episode. And so other than that, we are going to dive right in this week, and here we go. Nisan Trotter, welcome to the show, my man. I'm pumped to have you here.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And so as we kick this thing off, why don't we give the listeners kind of a little insight and look into like what was life like for little Nisan as you were a kid running around? Like, what did life look like as a little kid?
Absolutely. Little Nisan was a rambunctious little kid, got into almost everything, especially sports. I come from an athletic background. My brother played sports, my sister as well. And I'm the oldest of 3, so I kind of led that charge. It was sports year round, baseball, football, basketball. Felt like we did it all. And I'm from Silver Hill, Alabama. So that is a small little place sandwiched in between Mobile, Alabama and Pensacola, Florida. And it was kind of like we got the best of both worlds, or many worlds, really. You got farmland country out there, so lots of green space, beautiful flat space. Then you have the cities of Mobile, Alabama and Pensacola, Florida. And then you also have beach life too, because we're on the Gulf Coast. So you mix all of that with also sports year round. And I was into a little bit of everything. And I feel like I had a very much of a well-rounded childhood growing up in that place, Silver Hill, Alabama, man.
Yeah. Do you think that you were so driven in sports? Because like, obviously I don't follow sports super well, but obviously I know like in the college football world in Alabama, it's like football is life, right? At least from my perception from afar. And so like, do you think because you grew up in that kind of a culture, you were like even more driven to say like, and obviously with your story, you went on to play football and do some of those things. Was that kind of inspired by just the culture that you grew up around?
Bro, football wasn't just life. Football down there and still today is a god. You know what I mean? I'm just going to put it plainly. And if you touch a football, if you venture to touch a football in Alabama, probably most kids, at least 90% of them, have the dream of playing for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And for college football lovers, I don't mean to brag or boast, but I do mean to brag and boast. All we do is win championships, man. And so I was driven to be the absolute best that I could because I wanted to play for the best college football team in the nation. And that, of course, parlayed into other areas of my life. In order to play sports and make it to college football, you had to do well academically. And so super driven by sports, and it played a big role in my life.
Yeah. And obviously, like, as I dove into your story and as other people will dive more into your story as well, it's like, obviously you were very successful at that. You know what I mean? You went on to play at college. You went on to be, if I get the language right, I think it was like the player of the year, right? And you were really like, like you were a centerpiece of the team at the university that you went to. And one thing I'm kind of curious as we go a little bit past that part of your life is I'm curious, like, what was it like for you to go from this all-star football player, you're like, everybody at the school is preaching your name when you come out on the stadium, to then all of a sudden graduating and now you're in an office working in the finance world, and life, to my guess, is extraordinarily different, like polar opposites. I'm curious to hear from you, like, what was it like as you went from this, like literally you were famous, to all of a sudden, all right, now show up, at your office, 8 a.m. and you know what I mean? It's such a transition.
Sure. That is an awesome question. And when I think about it, I have to kind of compare it to when I was just getting started out in sports and I really didn't have a name for myself and had to make a name for myself. That kind of ebbs and flows even in the world of sports. But everybody starts off on the team. And until you make plays on the football field, no one really knows who exactly you are and what you're capable of doing. And then, like in high school, you can be one of the top players in your high school or in the county where you're playing and where you're balling at. And then once you get to college, it's like starting all over again.
Different world.
You're low man on the totem pole, so to speak.
Yeah.
But the only difference is once I went into, I guess what someone called the real world after sports, I no longer had that identity as an athlete. I was no longer a student athlete. I was really in just the business world space. But I try to, there used to be, and I don't know if you remember this, Stu, there used to be an ad that showed so many people who went professional in other things besides sports. And I used to love that ad. I used to broadcast over TV and show people who went to college and then became nurses, became doctors and engineers and accountants, and how they became professional in something other than sports, because only a small percentage of folks really make it professionally. And you can still be really good, but it's still hard, man, making it professionally. So I had that mindset that now I just need to reestablish myself in the business world and imagine myself going pro, but just not in the world of sports. So I try not to completely lose my identity as an athlete, because I still have some great things that I learned from that, like dedication, commitment, learning how to work in a team. But at the same token, I had to still establish myself and view myself as a pro, just not with a football in my hand.
Yeah, I think that's a ridiculous superpower that you have, where it was like, when you left this, I think what I've seen a lot of the time that happens to people is we're so immersed into some world that when we leave it, we lose that identity, and then we lose our purpose, we lose our meaning in life, and we go into this place of feeling so lost. But you had this like unbelievable power to say, okay, I'm going to this next thing. Let me like separate that this isn't my identity. I got some really good skills from it, and then let me use those skills. And I like the language you even used, to become professional still, but just professional at something else.
Absolutely.
Because I think when we get caught up in an identity of something and then we move, that's one of the trickiest parts. But separating yourself from the identity, that is huge. I'm curious, like, if anybody's listening to this and they're going through something, they're like, man, I was doing that thing for a year, 5 years, 10 years, and I'm realizing I don't want to do it, but my identity's so tied to it, or they're in that transition. Like, what piece of advice would you give them to say, like, here's how you cannot, because easier said than done, here's how you cannot attach yourself to that identity and kind of smoothly flow into whatever the next calling is in your life? Yeah.
My first piece of advice would be for them to acknowledge that we're in this age of mass information. We're a Google search away from being able to re-identify ourselves as something else, man. There's so much out there for us to explore and for us to do, and not just get the information, but get the information quickly too. So I would encourage any individual out there who's struggling with trying to detach themselves from who they at one point used to identify themselves as being, is to think about who you are now, who you want to be, and delve into that wholeheartedly, or explore different options, because there's a ton of information out there. And once you do that, then you're really just plug and play. You just start to put one foot in front of the other, and it may take some time. Just like, bro, it took so much time for me to, when I think about it, master the skill set of catching a football, which may sound simple, but when you're a wide receiver, which is what I played, the ball comes to you in many different directions, a different type of velocity and sting on the pass, and how you hold your hands together to really caress the ball so that it doesn't hit your pad. So these are multiple things that you learn over time. And rarely ever is anybody, I think, just an instant success at anything. And if you find those people that are, they're gifted, number one, but they would probably tell you too, you have no idea about how many hours I spent at this craft. And so on top of just consuming the information, you got to then begin to start to apply it and take it one day at a time. Don't be afraid to play the long game with it.
For real. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
The long game is real, right? We're kind of in an instant satisfaction world where it's like, well, no, if I don't want to do this thing and I want to do that thing now, well, I need to do it and then, be really good at it all of a sudden in like a week, which is
right.
Like, I know one thing you say, which I'm a believer of as well, is it's like we underestimate what we can do, or we overestimate what we can do in a year, but underestimate what we can do in like 5 years.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? If we put in, like, if you put in the grand scheme of it, like 5 years of your life, it's like the average human now, I think, lives like 79 or 80 years old. It's like 5 years. It's not that long. You know what I mean? And it's better than doing the other thing you didn't like for another 5 years and then making the switch. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Stu, on that point, I was making some mac and cheese for Thanksgiving for my mom. Not for my mom, but I was bragging to my mom about it. And she almost stops me mid-sentence and she goes, son, you don't have to give me the directions to make mac and cheese. I know how to make mac and cheese some 3 and 4 different ways, she said. And then she almost, I don't think she was trying to do it, Stu, but she almost rained on my parade when she said, you'll be good when you can make mac and cheese good without the cheese. And I'm like, I'm scratching my head trying to figure out how in the world do you make mac and cheese good without the cheese? And then what we came to is the summation of the whole thing was greatness takes time. And I then quickly reminded myself, I'm talking to my mom who has cooked in nursing homes. She was the food prep for a lot of local chain restaurants in our area. You've been cooking for some 30, 40 years, what have you. I mean, she's the type of person that will say, if I give you my recipe, I'm going to have to cut you because, no one can leave with this alive. And it just reminds me of just, if we really want to be great, 5 years is nothing in the grand scheme of things because greatness takes time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way you know if you've made it is if you can make mac and cheese without the cheese, which I don't know what you would call it then, because would you call it mac and cheese? Because it's not.
Can you call it mac and cheese? Like, I have no idea anymore.
Mac and not cheese.
I
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. She sounds like the goat of mac and cheese, though.
No question. She's the goat. One of my favorite recipes that she makes.
Yeah. One interesting way that someone once kind of shared this idea with me of like how we get so attached to the identity and how we can almost like not get so caught up in that, because I think it really does, when we get so attached to a sense of identity, it can create, when we move into another phase of our life, this anxiety, this almost depression in an extreme case. And one really beautiful way someone explained it to me is it's like, oftentimes if you look at your life as if you were like a tree. And in every branch, let's say you have an apple on that tree, and every apple is just a different aspect of your life. So one apple may be the identity you used to live in. Then another apple may be the identity of being a father. The other apple may be the identity of being a partner. The other one may be the identity of an athlete. You know what I mean? It's like we have all of these, and if we get so caught up in the identity of what we used to be, and we try to take care of that apple so much, and we're carrying it and looking for it, and not realizing we're the whole tree, that because we put so much attention into that, all of a sudden, all the other apples die.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So it's realizing like, okay, that's an apple. I'm still going to, like you said, I'm still going to practice being an athlete. I'm still going to have fitness be a part of my life, which will continue to be a part of your life.
Yep.
I'm still going to do some of those things, but I'm going to look at, well, what's another apple that I maybe haven't looked at on my tree, and how can I nurture that? And I think just by like separating yourself from it and realizing you have all these other apples that you can go to is I think an easy way that you can start to separate yourself from it.
Man, I mean, I love that concept, and it has me almost already spiraling down this path of what more all of that entails, because it's like, not only Stu are we then, if we don't nurture these other areas in our lives, not the danger of that is not only can those other fruits possibly perish, but also it's the narrative that you're telling yourself about who you are, possibly that you're one-dimensional, you're not multidimensional. Or I think what also the danger of that is what you think other people's perceptions of you are, and what possibly the narrative that they could be telling themselves about you. I think we also play into that a lot too. We want people to think a certain type of way about us. This is why when we go to the IGs and the social medias of the world, mainly what we're looking at are people's highlight reels. You know what I mean? Because we want them, it's perception. And then perception, unfortunately, becomes reality. So if I am getting the most feedback, positive feedback, or whatever type of feedback that I want about this is who people think that I am, the more I'm going to feed and nurture into that, at the risk of all these other things that I'm good at dying. And that's a scary place to be, man. I never want to be in that place.
Yeah. I think we almost should just end the episode there. That's the truth, man. It's a crazy thing. And so let's say we like continue down your life, right? So you leave the athlete, you go to, this new section of your life where you take some of the things you learned as an athlete, you start applying it to finance, right? Your determination, your persistence, all these different things. And I'm not quite sure timeline when it was, but I was wondering if you could share with our listeners this kind of massive moment in your life. It was like a defining moment in your life, we could call it, where all of a sudden you got this, like, I don't even think we call it a whisper, we call it like a shout. And I'm also curious if you could touch on how you and why you were able to act so quickly on that.
Well, whenever I thought that I was going right, life kind of turned left quickly. And it was like, whoa. I went to a great university, Bucknell University, and I did well for myself, as you mentioned, on the football team. And the next stage for me, even though I wanted to go pro for football, the next stage for me was going into finances. I majored in management, and I minored in economics at Bucknell University. It's a Northeast school. It's actually like a junior Ivy League school, really. Very, very well-known academic. And I took the typical Bucknellian route and went into investments to work for a prominent financial firm. And one of the hardest things that people fear happened to me. I got fired. And it actually ended up being a blessing. I took all of my Series 7 examinations, insurance exam, et cetera, commodities exam, to be able to trade people's money, et cetera, as an investment advisor. But it was just a calling that I was unfit to carry. So when they fired me, thankfully, because I wasn't meeting quota, it might sound very gory, for lack of better terms, but it happens all the time in that space because it's very hard to make it in. I thank God for that closed doors too, because it led me to then retransition my life back to Bucknell University, where I worked for my alma mater for about 5 years, because the skills that I learned at this prominent financial firm was transferable. And so I was able to, instead of invest people's money, I was able to ask people to give back to Bucknell University as a fundraiser. And about 5 years into this, I think the well started to dry up. Well, I knew that it was drying up because I just wasn't feeling that passion. My heart wasn't feeling fulfilled. I wasn't driven by purpose anymore.
Yeah.
And I felt this whisper. If you can feel a whisper, it was like an impression upon my heart where God was like, "Why are you still here?" And I'm like, did I hear that? Did I feel that? Stu, it like to scare the snot out of my nose, man. I rushed down like 3 flights of stairs because I was working on the 3rd floor of the campus building that I was in. I rushed into the bathroom, started pacing back and forth. I doused my face with water, looked myself in the mirror and asked myself, did I really just feel that? Or did I hear that? Why are you still here? And on that day, I turned in my resignation at Bucknell University as a fundraiser on leap day of leap year, February the 29th, 2012. And I haven't looked back since, man. It was one of the marquee moments of my life.
Yeah. How did you and why did you act so quickly on that? Because like for you, it was, God's voice that you heard. For some others, many people hear similar things, but some people call it intuition. Some people call it the universe, right? But my belief is that oftentimes we hear that voice, and for a majority of people, we go, yeah, but whatever. I'll figure it out later. Like not right now. You know what I mean? But you were like, holy crap, I'm putting in my resignation today. Like, what compelled you to say, I'm not waiting another day. I'm not waiting another week, another month, another year. Like, I'm moving on this today.
Yeah. Wow. I'm going to try to answer this as succinctly as I know how. There's just a lot of moving parts to it. So it's hard to give you a direct answer. But from a direct standpoint, Stu, I was just trying to be obedient. I really felt like God told me, like, this is it. And I was also reading the tea leaves that, man, I'm feeling dried up in this space. What more is there left for me to accomplish and do? It wasn't like I was failing. I was doing well in this position, but just because, you could chase a check and earn the money, but still feel empty, man.
Amen.
And so that was a piece of it and a part of it. But I'm also not the type of entrepreneur that will say, just jump off the cliff and grow your wings on the way down. That's just not me. So a part of it was also too, I knew that in the fitness space, I had something that I could also be equally as great at, if not better. And that I also was just enthused by. It gave me a sense of joy and purpose. So I seen that part-time, I was making equally the same amount as a fitness entrepreneur that I was as a full-time staff person at Bucknell University. And it paid well. I had benefits and things like that. So it wasn't like I was living check to check either.
Right.
But I think most people with a brain would say, if I can do this part-time, make equally as much. I'm just being real with you, Stu. Make equally as much as I can in something full-time. What if I put all my eggs in this basket and just go all out? And that was also a part of it too. So it was there was some risk involved, if you will, because it was just like, I got to do this today. Not another day. I got to do this today. But then there was also a piece of it that was a calculated
it made
risk
sense
as well. Are you following what I'm saying?
100%. Yeah. And I think it's kind of crazy how, like, when you say, you just didn't feel that like fuel in your heart anymore, that burn.
Right.
I think it's interesting how I think that's like universal. You know what I mean? Like, when we do something initially, we may have this like fire, this excitement, it's new, and if it really is something that we enjoy, that lasts time, right? It could be, it could last a year, it could last 5 years, it could last 50 years for some people. But I think for a lot of people, they do something for a year, 5 years, whatever it is, and they do feel that like, whoa, this isn't like getting me going anymore. And so I think that's one really important thing for people to hear right now is like, are you having at all any of that in your life right now? Because if you are, that's like a real sign to listen to. That's not happening by accident. That's happening because maybe this is a page closing in your book. And I think another lesson people can take from you, which is so beautiful, is it's like, what can you do right now that's maybe not as extreme as you, Nisan? There's like, I'm leaving today, but like, what can you do right now today so you can start building something, whether it's applying for other jobs, whether it's building a side hustle, like what other things can you start doing today so that as you start to do that little bit over time, that maybe in the road, 6 months down the road, a year down the road, a month down the road, when you get your own whisper, you can go, okay, it really is time now. I also have this other thing that I can put some more of my eggs in. And I think those are a few things people can take from you to start moving out of that place if they are feeling some of that like soul sleeping life cycle that they're living in.
Mm-hmm. And the operative word that you use is today.
Today.
Today. Because the game
today
changes the older you get in it. It really, really does. I'm just going to keep it 100 with you. I've been sitting now as a fitness entrepreneur for 11 years, going on 11 years. Now that I date myself, I was 5 years into being a fundraiser at Bucknell University. And I just think the longer you linger in whatever, I'm being 100 with you. Like if I were to just, could I do what I did back then now? I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure. Unless there's this another big episodic, like, because I don't know if everybody's going to have that type of impression.
Yeah.
Like, dude, it was strong. Why are you still here? Almost to where I felt like I heard something audibly. Point. You know, I don't know if everybody's going to have the luxury of that. But what you said that's so beautiful, you said today, what can you do today? If you see the writing on the wall, it might be a little bit easier to jump if you start doing something today, especially if you've been lingering in a career in what you consider at one point it was your go-to. If you've been lingering in that and it's no longer lighting your fire, it's best to move on something today because I think the longer you hang on to it, the harder it will get to jump.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. And there's always those signs too, right? And they say if you're waiting for a sign, this is the sign. So for some people, if you're listening to this and you've been waiting for a sign, you've been waiting for that whisper.
There you go.
Nisan, you're bringing the whisper today. I think for a lot of people that can be really impactful. So thank you for sharing that, man. One thing I want to ask you, kind of as we start to get closer to the end here, is one thing that you shared. I believe this was in your book from some of the research that I did on you. Okay. Is that you mentioned that you can't find your gift if you don't believe that you have a gift. And I think that's so true. Like we get in life what we're looking for. You know what I mean? It's like if I tell people don't think of a pink elephant, people instantly think of a pink elephant because it's what, you know what I mean? Your focus dictates what you see, that dictates your actions. And so I think, you know, if you're going through your life and you're going, I don't know if I have a gift, and well, then you're probably not going to find it. So sort of what I would be curious for you is, how does someone go from not knowing if they have a gift to believing that they have one so that then that gift can appear to them? Like, how do they shift some of the belief in themselves for that?
Oh, wow. You harping on my topic now. Like, I can really get into my bag on this one, too. Really, the whole belief notion is more real than what people give it credit for. Because what you focus on the longest becomes the strongest. And for me, at this stage of my life, I can humbly say, I travel this country, people pay me to speak at their events. When I was young, though, I didn't believe I had it. I really did not believe that I could put two words together, let alone say a complete sentence. Because I was verbally bullied for the way that I sounded. I had this raspy voice and kids mocked me in school They would take their jabs at me at recess and huddle around in circles as they were good mimicking my voice. It made me want to like crawl in the fetal position somewhere in the corner to hide. And it wasn't really until someone believed in me that my belief kicked in. And it was my mom. It was truly my mom who was my speech coach, my voice coach, but before I ever really wanted one. She would hand me like these long speeches and make me recite them verbatim. She'd make me act as if I was the next Martin Luther King Jr. trying to deliver his people from freedom. That's really how she was, dude. And I'm saying all of that to say, if I'm able to tell you I went from not wanting to use my voice to being made a mockery for my voice, for now people paying me to speak, and it's not about the dollars, it's also about trying to use my voice to, and I know that I've done this, shift a generation, turn a generation into a better direction. I'm telling you, I'm that person that's saying, I believe in you with whatever you got, with whatever you might think that you have. You just got to focus on that belief that I'm trying to instill you and impregnate you with, that my mom impregnated me with. So that's where it's got to start. If you don't have the belief yourself, you got to look for some sign of, I think, someone or something believing in you until your belief kicks in. And once my belief started to kick in, that I had something to share via my voice, the game was over. Like, it was over, bro.
I love it. One thing, too, that's I think partners up with this beautifully is something that's been playing through my head a lot lately is like we all, not all, but oftentimes a lot of people procrastinate. And there's this thing that I kind of do where it like kicks procrastination in the ASS, we'll say. And it's this simple phrase, and it's should, must, now. And it's like, well, is there, and you partner it with uncomfortable action. It's not like, oh, I should eat a sandwich because I'm hungry. Well, Stu said that I must eat a sandwich. I'm going to go make a sandwich. No, it's like, what is this whisper that I know? We're talking about today a lot on this podcast, right? What's the whisper that I know I should do, even if it scares the crap out of me? Well, then I must do it, and then I must do it right now. So it's like, what's the gift that you think you may have that you may not believe in yourself? Now you're hearing us kind of shed some belief on you today. And what's the thing you could say, okay, if I know I should do this, and this is the thing that's calling in me, you must do it. And if you must do it, the time is today. The time is right now. And I think it's just a beautiful calling for anybody listening to this to say, take the action today. Go should, must, now. Do it even if it scares you. And like you said, once you do step into that lane that's your gift and you start then believing in yourself, then the game's over.
Yeah, because belief is action too. That really is. It's hard for you to tell me that you believe that you're gifted and you haven't really acted upon anything. Like, how do I know if my mom's mac and cheese tastes great if she's not in the kitchen cooking? It takes action. And I love it. Yeah.
And so what would you say are a few ways, if someone's listening to this and they're going, well, what are a few ways I can start to like discover some of my gifts? Like what is a piece of advice you give them on how they can start to find that if some people feel like, well, maybe I don't know what it is. I'm not getting the whisper yet.
Yeah, I get that question a lot. And I love the words of Socrates. He said, the unexamined life is a life not worth living. And it really comes down to, it comes down to ruthlessly interrogating yourself. You got to do it almost subconsciously sometimes. Asking yourself question after question after question after question. This is how you discover your gift. I talk about it a little bit in my book for sure, but I mean, it's got to be key questions like, what are you able to spend the most time on, almost as if you forgot about time, because you're having just that much fun with it. Right now, still, look, I can tell you've done this a time or two because you're nice with it. You ask questions, you let me talk. I've been on a number of podcasts where it's like, is it about me or is it about you right now? Which one? Should I be asking the questions?
Sure.
You're good at this. And that's another thing. You get the validation from others. And I'm not talking about your best friend who don't want to hurt your feelings. I'm talking about mere strangers that when you get in front of them, it's almost like they want to give you a round of applause. You got to ask yourself those type of questions, Because if you don't examine yourself to know what you're truly good at, and if you're not spending necessary me time to figure it out, you're not gonna land on your gift.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. You said an unexamined life is a life not well lived?
An unexamined life is a life not worth living.
Damn.
Yeah. Like is that crucial? Yeah.
It's crazy. And it is so true that it's like, if you really want to figure out what you want to do with your life, it's an introspective game. It's not an extra, if that's a word, extra. Yep. It's not outside. It's internal. It's not external. It's not, oh, what did my mom say? What did my best friend say? What is the people that I follow on Instagram doing? It's like, well, no, get introspective. I love how you said it, like, interrogate yourself, figure out what the hell's on the inside here. What do I really want? And then go from that place of internal direction rather than external direction.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
100%.
So Nisan, my man, you dropped so many nuggets today. I'm so grateful. I'm curious, if people want to get more info on you, I know there's a million other things you're doing that we didn't have time to catch up on today.
Sure.
But if people want to see everything you're up to with your book, with speaking, with fitness, with all of even if they want to check out your family, not in a weird way, you know what I mean? But be like, oh, kids are beautiful. Where can people find more information on you?
Sure, man. You can visit www.nisantrotter.com. And Stu and I, we were joking around before we got started. That's Nisan -1S, Nisan, trotter.com. So you could visit me there. Also, on social media, on the IGs of the world at Nisan RPM. And yeah, you can just check me out on those type of platforms. My book, you can get my book on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles as well. I even narrated for you on Audible too, and it's called Born Gifted, How to Unwrap the Gifts Inside You for Supernatural Success. And I would love to be in touch with you outside of this podcast.
Heck yeah, man. Awesome. Well, we will put all that in the show notes. Last question I have for you, a question we ask every guest because we want to help people find direction, but we believe in doing it through action. Obviously, we've been talking a lot about action today. But I would be curious, like, what would you say is one thing someone listening to this can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life?
Absolutely. Write it down. Make it super plain. And take the action today. Just to simply write down your course of action. Where do you see and make it simple too. It doesn't have to be a monumental, gigantic move, but it's got to be something. In fact, I would whittle it down to where you'll be successful because it's not that hard, so that we can at least get some momentum. So write your vision down and then come up with just one simple action that you can take that will move you forward in that vision.
There it is. Solid. All right, Nisan, thank you so much for coming on again today, my man. Again, loads of gold nuggets sprinkled all throughout this podcast. So thank you for being here, man. I appreciate you massively, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. I'm incredibly grateful, Stu.